Peter got a brief introduction. Welcome, everybody. Well, we still have one more minute, so Roberta, would you like to, or Bruce would, or Peter, would you like to introduce yourself further?
Further.
You got, Catherine got a brief intro of what you do.
Well, I am the former curator of the Botanical Garden at MSU, where I was the edible and toxic plant person. I still teach in talks, mostly edible plants and toxic plants for people and animals. I got my start in toxic plants lecturing zoo veterinarians about the dangers of toxic plants to the various categories of zoo exhibits. They have the challenge of not only having exhibits be free of poisonous weeds, but also, you know, so many times someone says that animal's so cool, I'd like to feed them something. And so they turn around and grab a branch off something and feed it to them. And huge tragedies have taken place because of this.
Well, you guys have a lot in common. Welcome, everybody, and I hope other people get a chance to introduce themselves as when we get into the Q&A. But Catherine is in foods. She's the Associate Professor, Director of Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems, and in the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition. So I'm sure you have some similar backgrounds. Welcome, Catherine. Catherine's developing a really fascinating project, and I know some of you are really going to be interested in it. Maybe have some, we'll have some conversation about it in a few minutes, but Catherine, please embellish my intro.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm an associate professor at MSU. I teach our intro nutrition course and have an active research program. One of my main areas of study is urban agriculture and community gardening. I'm also really interested in behavior change. And so the project that I'm going to be sharing with you today is about applying behavior change principles for sustainability. I would love to hear a short introduction from everyone else. Is that possible to, just to know who's on the call? Because I'm hoping this is really interactive. So I'll want to continue introducing themselves. Is that possible? All right.
Yes, I think Sarah's next on my screen. If you're ready, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Allen, 2 kids in the Okemos School District, do environmental justice in the area, green team at the township, just a lot of different environmental things. Thank you.
Awesome.
Bruce and then Amanda or Kim.
Hi, Bruce Peffers. I retired. I work with the Meridian Conservation Corps, the Green Burial Committee, and the Green Team. And basically got involved in this conversation back when COVID started, and I was still working. And it's been a very useful and informative venue.
Great, nice to meet you.
How about John and then Sam?
Yeah, John Sarver. I'm a member of the Township's Environmental Commission, and also I participate on the Township's Energy Team.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Catherine. I'm Sam Lovell. I'm a semi-retired landscape architect that grew up in Meridian Township, Hazlet in particular, and actually worked pretty much all over the state, lower Michigan, including Michigan State University and quite a bit in the Detroit area. But having a little more time on my hands, I've been enjoying attending the Green Dialogue. It's great.
Great. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Kim, Roberta, and then Bill. Or how about Bruce? I mean, let's see. How about Bill and then Roberta? Go ahead.
Yeah, hopefully my camera's working today. I'm Bill McConnell. I serve on the Township Environmental Commission and the Planning Commission, retired from the academic side of MSU and now work part-time in student life and engagement, mainly on food issues.
Great, nice to meet you.
Roberta, and then Kim, if
Hi
you
there.
want. Go ahead.
Sure. Hi, my name is Roberta McCall, and I'm a citizen in Meridian Township in the Wardcliff neighborhood, and I am not on any committees. I'm just here as a citizen.
Wonderful. Thanks
Nice
for
to meet
coming.
you. And I'm interested in native plants and growing food and that type of thing.
Great. Should I share my, can I share my screen?
Sure. Yeah.
See how we can do that. Okay, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk with folks who, who might be interested in our new initiative and can lend some input and potentially support. So, as I said, I am at MSU, and we have begun. We're kind of in the starting stages of a new initiative called Earth is My Home. And today I'm going to be sharing with you our partners and contributors, a little bit of background, our mission, vision, and strategy, some ways that we've been thinking about the science of behavior change. And one of the key components of the initiative is a checklist. So I'm hoping to be getting your thoughts throughout this hour, but also hoping to get your thoughts on our checklist. So I'm not going to be able to introduce everyone, but there's been a lot of contributions from many, many people thus far for this project. We initially came together about a year and a half ago to apply for a google.org climate impact challenge. And we were, not surprisingly, a lot of competition, not successful with that grant application, but it was this wonderful opportunity to really jumpstart a new initiative, and we've been working together ever since. So I don't need to share with all of you, I'm sure that we are facing a climate and ecological crises, and that policy and programs to address these crises are clearly needed. That, when we think about, what needs to happen, those are usually at the top of people's lists. But in addition, it's also the case that individual and household behavior changes could help enormously for many reasons. One, it's all hands on deck at this point. We really do need to be working on multiple levels simultaneously. When you think about policy, what does policy actually do? A lot of it is intended to incentivize behavior change. I like to use the example of seatbelts. So, when I was growing up, it was not commonplace for people to use their seatbelts, but now that it's the law, it's pretty universal that people put on their seatbelts in their car. So policies are created to incentivize behavior change, but if those policies aren't happening fast enough, is there another way that we can encourage people to change their behaviors? And when we're talking about behavior changes, we're talking about, many different sectors, things like diets and household energy and transportation, yards. I heard people are interested in native plants. These could have a big impact if many people were involved in them. And in addition, it's also the case that, people, once they take individual actions for the environment, that it can help people see themselves differently, and that they might be more willing to take collective action or advocate for policies if they take that first step. So our main question for our initiative is how to increase everyday environmentalism. And the Pew Research Center has done some polling that's been really interesting and helpful. So you can see on this slide that most Americans report a concern for the environment. And actually, interestingly, the Gallup, I don't have this on the slide, but the Gallup organization has polled people, do you identify yourself essentially as an environmentalist? And that has actually gone down over the years. So fewer and fewer people, it's gone from like in the 90s, it was like 70% of people identified as an environmentalist to now about 40%. So people might not be willing to use that label, but yet 75% are particularly concerned about the environment. But among those people, 75%, there's only about 20% of the population that are taking actions to protect the environment all the time. There is a large majority that are taking action some of the time. So the main question is, how can we move these people from some of the time to more of the time? Maybe not, all of the time necessarily, but from some of the time to more of the time. And this might be too small for people to see, but just kind of put on these demographics for people to see that really there's not many demographics difference between people who are taking action all of the time and people who are taking action some of the time. So when we're thinking about working with that group of, the some of the time people to kind of like move them in the direction of all of the time, we're really kind of talking about people from all walks of life, all political spectrums, so we're really kind of talking about the snapshot of America. It's not a special group. So I was hoping to start off the conversation by hearing from you all, what are reasons you think people are not taking actions for the earth? And then my second question is, what do you think would encourage people to take actions? And when we have been thinking about actions, we've been thinking about them in 6 categories: nature, home energy, food, water and waste, transportation, and advocacy. So I'd love to open this up to have a conversation. What do you all think are reasons that people are not taking actions, even if they're concerned? And maybe I'll stop sharing so people can see each other. Go ahead, Sarah.
So I'll say over the years, as I've talked to people about things, and my friends and family and such know when they have a question about something environmental, they come to me, to ask questions, whatever. And when I talk to people about stuff, it's about ease and about expense. When your transportation takes you 1.5 miles to walk to get to a bus, that's not an ease. That's not a, easy thing to do for, not that it's not easy, but it's like, it's not something that people are going to do for transport. Where you can be in other locations and you walk 2 blocks and you're on that transport. So I think ease is one of them. When you're talking about home energy, I for what that list is, it's when something is more expensive to be able to put something on your house or to change something over. For me, I think that's what I probably most often, and I'll just leave it at that for somebody else to speak, but that's probably for me what I find most is ease and not wanting it to break the bank.
Sure. Yeah. John.
Well, I think a lot of times people only take action if there's kind of a twofer, in the sense of, a lot of times people do energy efficiency or solar because they're environmentally conscious, but also they want to save some money. And I think a lot of other things may be, they know it's good for the environment, but it's good for their personal health. And so I think sometimes you need that secondary, let's call it, reason for taking some action, because everybody's busy. There's just so many things you can do. And so, I think we all have a tendency to focus on certain things. And sometimes we need a little nudge like, oh, yeah, I could save some money by, buying purchasing a solar system or I know an electric vehicle is good for the environment, but also I like the ride, it's quiet, that sort of thing. So I think, yeah, frequently it's a two-for situation.
Great. Others, yeah, Amanda.
I think similarly that it's really just about people's time and their perceptions that they are so busy that they don't have time to make a behavioral change, even in thinking about making some kind of behavioral change. And yeah, I think that's one of the toughest things we face because we have to prove and show them that things you can do, very simple and easy things that don't require a ton of planning and a ton of your time that can add up to make a big difference.
Other thoughts? Or other ideas about potential ways to encourage people? Sam?
Yeah, I think what's already been said is pretty much covers it, the whole ease and financial issues. But then the only other thing to add to that, I think, is what sort of exacerbated the problem is with the current political world, there seems to be at least one agenda out there that tolerates not paying attention to the environment. So it sort of gives people a place to go to feel good about the fact that it's okay to not really be that active, to do things responsibly. So it's just unfortunate that right now we're kind of polarized in that way with our political world.
Yeah. Bill?
One of the things that we have done in the past as an environmental commission in the township, and I know a lot of similar organizations do, is to try to give explicit recognition to folks who have gone above and beyond. And while I don't necessarily think that having competitions for the best value system is the only way to encourage people, but certainly giving people praise when they are taking those actions. And on the flip side, there's a negative reinforcement that's also available. So I think particularly of the city of East Lansing sending people postcards when they're not quite getting their recycling right. Thanks for participating. We know you want to be a hero. You can do a little bit better on this thing. It sounds like people respond quite well to that.
Yeah, right. Great. Okay, I'm going to go back to, go ahead, Laura.
Well, just briefly, there's a lot of policies and maybe habits that are old habits, old policies that discourage action, or they encourage more waste or use of resources. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, old habits. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so these are really, really important challenges, right? We have challenges, and you all came up with some great ideas for solutions as well. So I think I'm going to skip ahead. Let me see what my slides are just in terms of, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Just give me a second. I'm going to skip ahead. Let's see.
We're a talkative group, so don't let us.
No, it's great. Some of the things that, in addition to the things that you all have identified, let's see there. In addition to the things that you all identified, some of the challenges that that we have seen, we've been doing some focus groups and actually been doing some surveys recently, and I can share a little bit about those. But some of the challenges in addition, and so that's why I wanted to hear from you first, not to bias you or anything, because it's really helpful. Sometimes you're like in a tunnel, like you've been working on something for so long, you're just like thinking in one way. So really hearing all of your responses is really helpful. But some of the challenges that we've identified are that people don't know what to do. So in addition to, being expensive or inconvenient, okay to, not do the right thing. People also, if they do want to take action, oftentimes they don't know exactly what to do. I read a recent study where people said in a focus group situation that, sure, they'd like to take action, but they want to know that other people are taking action too. And this is, I'll talk about in just a minute, that kind of plays into the science of something called social norms. These are these unwritten rules about how to behave, and we don't have social norms right now, like kind of universal social norms right now to take action for the planet kind of on a regular basis. And so people want to kind of see that, I'm not the only one here, that I want to see that other people are taking action. And someone mentioned recognition. So it's really not also a norm to kind of recognize people when they take action for the earth. So they feel like, okay, I did this, but like nobody's noticing, nobody's paying attention. And also in survey after survey, people, you find that people say that no one is really talking about what they can do for the planet, like on a daily basis. I know all of you are, but you're probably in that 20%, of taking action every day, but like thinking about that middle group where they're taking some action, but maybe not every day. It's really not part of regular conversation. I was actually noticing, like just the other day, like watching Netflix and like kind of scrolling through, like all the different options that there are on Netflix, and thinking about like, you're kind of in this like alternate world when you go into, mass media where there's like no climate crisis happening. There's not, so like people aren't even talking. People are mostly not talking about it in our media, in our films and TV shows and things like that either. And so we've kind of thought about these challenges and how we could address those challenges with some solutions. And I, as I said, like, please raise your hand, interject, like, would love to hear your thoughts on what we're proposing. So I'm going to kind of like walk you through it, but kind of just in general, that people don't know what to do. I've worked on a few projects that the health department has done here with checklists, and we found that checklists, educational checklists, are really powerful behavior change motivators. So when the state of Michigan, so for example, there's one called the Healthy School Action Tool, comes up with like a best practice for schools for health. So in this case, it's like nutrition and physical activity, like what to do. Then, and when there's learning associated with that checklist, so like what's the best practice, and then how and why to do that best practice. That can be really motivating to, we found it's very motivating to schools and communities to have those kinds of checklists. It's also really motivating for people to hear, so this gets into kind of like the power of persuasion, to hear that other people are doing things, and even more powerful than that, like to hear that like other people are doing something, is that more and more people are doing something. This is like something that it's kind of a technique that advertisers use oftentimes. So people want to be kind of part of that upswing in, and so if it would be possible for us to kind of kind of signal to people that more and more people are taking actions for the earth. Somebody mentioned celebration. So we have this idea to personally thank people when they take actions for the earth and to celebrate their actions. And that's something, again, that the health department does with the Healthy School Action Tool. They provide awards to schools for, taking, doing these best practices on these checklists. And then to the idea that no one is taking action, the idea of creating training for those kinds of conversations, and then like creating spaces, like giving people suggestions for how to have those one-on-one conversations is another kind of component of what we're thinking about with this initiative. Does trigger any thoughts for folks that they want to share kind of right off the bat, and then I can get into like the specifics of the initiative. Okay. So I think I'm going to back up with this. Yeah, so we are using the science of behavior change in kind of five different threads for this initiative to think about how to encourage people to change their behavior for the earth. So as I mentioned, the first is checklists. The second is this idea of social norms. So we've been looking into many of these kinds of actions that people can take, and they're like as difficult as like biking to work when you live 20 miles away. So that would be something that would be like a way more challenging thing to do, but could be as simple as hanging up your clothes to dry instead of using your dryer. So your dryer is like one of the largest uses of energy in your home besides heating and cooling, and hanging up your clothes could be a money and energy saver for people. And when you think about hanging up your clothes, when I was growing up, it was actually quite common for people to hang up their clothes. And my family spends a lot of time in Italy. My husband is Italian, and I actually just looked up the statistics for Italians, because when we go there, everyone hangs up their clothes, nobody has a dryer. And actually in 2014, they actually did a survey. Only 3% of Italians owned a dryer in 2014, so only 10 years ago. So I would imagine like maybe some more have a dryer now, but not that many from what I can see when we go there to visit family. And that's a social norm. So there's, it's not the norm here. The norm here is to use your dryer, but in Italy, the norm is to hang up your clothes. And so is there a way for us to seed these new social norms for these earth actions? Personal conversations and canvassing can be really powerful as well. That's why political campaigns use that. Having people see themselves as an environmentalist, like if they do one thing, then maybe they'd be more open to doing others. And then there's lots of other kinds of behavior change theories that we've kind of been incorporating. One of the ones that I really appreciate is from an organization named RARE. So they talk about motivating the change, socializing the change, and ease the change. So our idea is to create a website and app. And you're probably thinking like, oh no, not another app, which is kind of what I'm thinking as well. But that would be a little bit different than what your traditional like app and website have done so far. And to kind of get started with this, we have worked with students to analyze existing websites and apps that encourage people to change their behaviors. And they have so they kind of like created a spreadsheet of like positive things that these apps are doing that might be helpful for people to change their behaviors. And you've probably seen these things like where they like ask you to calculate your carbon footprint and then give you suggestions and things like that. And then also kind of challenging attributes that we might want to kind of address if we created a new one. So they liked that they were interactive and that there was community and that they were social, educational, positive, etc. So those are the kinds of things that we can incorporate in this new system. But some of the pitfalls to overcome, pretty much all of the ones that we've seen so far, have you start out by calculating your carbon footprint. So many of you might have done this as well, where they ask you, how many miles do you drive and how many flights do you take? And I actually like looked at one where it was like, tell me your energy bills for the past monthly energy bills for the past 3 years. It was like very time consuming, because they really want to get it right. Like, what is your carbon footprint? And at the end, they tell you, here you are, this is how much carbon you're using. And it's really, it kind of, the students and, the people that we did some focus groups showing it to people. It's really kind of actually demotivating because sure, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to change, but it like puts you kind of in this bad space of kind of feeling pretty bad about yourself. And the truth is that our society is not set up, for many of these eco actions, and we're kind of all in the same boat together. So there's really no reason to like make people feel bad about it. We're just it's kind of just like, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work rather than like shaming people about it. They might not be engaging enough, so people lose interest. People still feel powerless. They don't feel like their actions will make a difference because they can't see what other people are doing on these apps. And then pretty much all of them are just shared online. And, I think people are kind of burnt out from just like online systems. So there's like no organized face-to-face system with these. Any comments or thoughts about that? So so we got into that. So our vision is to be a leading global source. So this would be an MSU initiative with many partners to be a leading global source for nature-based education, training, organizing, community, gratitude, and joy, to create and celebrate a global network of ordinary people starting conversations, and what we call it gushing appreciation. So really like taking a minute to individually thank people for what they're doing, who are, taking actions to love, protect, and heal our home, the earth. And so we have this very large checklist, as I said, in these 6 different categories, and we really can't change, as I said, like changing the social norm to hang up your clothes instead of using the dryer. Like we really can't kind of conceptually think that we could change, every single one of these as a new social norm, but we're thinking kind of an umbrella of changing or creating a new norm in our society to that it is commonplace for people to talk about and take actions to care for the earth every day. So you like wake up and you like, brush your teeth, get dressed, whatever. And you also think about like, okay, what am I going to do for the earth today? And then the second is to notice and appreciate others for their earth nurturing actions. And this can be like in a systematic way through the app that we're creating, where it'll be easy for you to write thank you, like personal, like person to person thank you notes to, like one person to one person. It's not like a bot or a chat or, an AI thing or anything, but it's like an actual person constructing, creating this note for you. Or even in our day-to-day conversation. So someone came to my office a couple of months ago and she had her bike helmet with her. And as she was leaving, I said to her, thank you so much for biking. It really means a lot to me. And she kind of was, she kind of looked at me. She was like, oh, like nobody's ever said that to her before. And so the idea would be to make this a commonplace thing. Like when my husband does the dishes, I thank him. I'm always like, thank you for doing the dishes. Like if somebody bikes to work, like thanking them for it, that's just like part of our day-to-day conversations. And so, and then the idea would be that, we're creating this app, which creates like a system for people, but the main idea would be that we would have these personal one-on-one conversations, and that could either be with your friends and family or your neighbors, or even through a canvassing system. So like campaigning for the earth. So instead of campaigning for a political candidate, like sharing the idea of these new norms through, even knocking on doors or canvassing at, festivals and markets and things like that. We have entomologists on our team because we're very interested in native plants and pollinators. And so at one of our meetings where we were coming up with a name, and we came up with a mascot. So the rusty-patched bumblebee is the first endangered species bee in the country and is also native to Michigan. And we'll be putting this on the URL earthismyhome.org. So the students at MSU have kind of drafted a look and feel for the website, which you can see here. And the idea would be to host this checklist of best practices, that each checklist action would have a little bee next to it. And if you click on the bee or hover over the bee, then it would like pop up a little blurb of, how or why you should do things. We're working with a documentary filmmaker who's also interested in filming people. So that bee could like also pop up a little short, like TikTok style video with people telling you, I'm going to keep using the same example, like how to buy a drying rack, and like if you don't know how to get started hanging up your clothes, like how to get started and what you need to be thinking about, and things like that. You would get started by, an invitation to, before you even filled out the checklist yourself, to write a thank you note to someone else. And this again, like lots of input. Students do, obviously play a lot of video games, and there's one particular video game that has some kind of doom name. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the name of the game, but apparently there's like some kind of system where you can like chat with each other, where it's like one of those like fridge magnet poetry sets, like where you can like maneuver like different phrases and things. And so the students are writing like, dozens and dozens of positive phrases that you would be able to select from to kind of create a personal, unique thank you note so you would be presented with someone and what their checklist says, and then you can craft this thank you note to them. We're kind of playing around with the idea of an award system. So that's something I'd love to get your feedback on, whether or not an award system would be motivating or demotivating. Like, we're hoping that people kind of internalize through getting that kind of gratitude and thank you, that they'd want to do this for themselves. Not necessarily just for an external award, but we found through, as I said, the state of Michigan's, they have this whole suite of health tools, and they provide these checklists, and then communities or schools get these awards. And we found that they're very successful in motivating people. And then there would be volunteer training on the system as well, so that you can like really easily in like 10 minutes get trained to tell your own story and like why you're participating in this movement, and how to have these kinds of one-on-one conversations. We could even take from the playbook of political campaigns to kind of think about how to do systematic canvassing if people were interested in that. And there'd be like other kinds of volunteer opportunities as well. So we are in the process of fundraising at the moment. We have some small grant funding from MSU to just kind of like get the website going. We have a draft checklist, and we're hoping to refine that with as much input as possible. We want to make sure we have the right things on that checklist. And we're collecting data. So we are running a Qualtrics survey right now with the checklist, and the checklist says, I do this now, or I plan to do this. And it's been really, we have about 200 people filled it out so far. It's really been like so heartwarming to see, what people are already doing, and that just by filling out this checklist, they say, there's no prompting on it, they say that they plan to do like new things. And then eventually this could we could create a checklist system for schools and workplaces, local governments as well. So this starting with this checklist for individual and households. So the checklist has been developed through looking at the literature for best practices, and organizations like Drawdown. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Project Drawdown. So they have like the top 20 high impact climate actions, because our initiative is not just for climate, but also for nature. So we're incorporating, many things that might not be on that list, and hoping that the checklist items are kind of like the confluence of ease, impact, and likelihood of adoption. I'm going to pause at this point and kind of see if people want to share their thoughts and comments, and then I can kind of show you what is on our draft checklist and get more specific comments at that point. But yeah, I would love to hear any feedback that people have, any reactions.
I love the idea. I'm very excited about this project, so thanks for sharing. But I really like the idea of an award system, even if it's, a virtual badge or a yay, you did it. Like I can't believe like I don't need any help or motivation to be an environmentalist, but I can't believe how much I am addicted to getting my 10,000 steps because of the reward I get from my Fitbit. So I definitely see that it would be very valuable to the app.
Exactly. Yeah. Other thoughts?
Yeah, this is Roberta. I one of the you were asking about barriers to participation and that type of thing. One of very large barrier for me and my community is access, because I didn't mention it earlier, but I'm blind and I use a guide dog, and I use a system in the iOS Apple milieu called VoiceOver, which um, um, translates text into speech. And I can't I can't count the number of apps that buttons are not labeled and they just say button, 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 and you have no idea what they mean or what they do, or so that is a huge issue for me. It includes websites, it includes apps, all technology. So it's much easier to build in that type of accessibility from the ground up than it is from a finished product to work backwards. So I hope that you keep that on your radar.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that comment. Yeah, we have a lot of encouragement from MSU for, incorporating accessibility in
Yeah.
what we're doing. And there's actually quite a few resources at MSU
Yeah.
for help with that. And so,
How can I help you?
yeah,
Yeah, MSU has great some great people working on
yes,
access. So that's, yeah,
yes. Thank you so much for that
great.
comment.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this to us.
Sarah.
So I think this is really great, and I'm going to email you afterwards to have more discussion. But one of the things that I think in terms of Roberto's talking about barriers, I'm barriers for her, and I'm thinking of barriers for things like you're talking, one of the things that you are bringing up is drying rack. I have dried my clothes that way since watching my grandmas do it in their backyards to doing it now. But then I run into the problem of I have a scent issue. Like I get headaches from the scents that are like I have to have the free and clear detergent, whatever. So then when I dry rack my clothes, the rest of my family is going away from dry rack because it smells musty and it smells and in Michigan when you can't do anything outside in the winter. So I'm not asking for an answer, but I'm pushing with this. There are barriers for some of the things that might be on this checklist that you don't necessarily know about until you do them. And then you go, okay, well, what's the solution for that? So I'm literally sitting here going, okay, well, what's another solution to being able to dry rack your clothes if there must, it's stuff like that become the barriers for why people don't go that direction for drying their clothes. And how to, I think it's important to include, well, if this is an issue, here's some solutions or stuff like that too, because that's how we get into this. Well, it's just easier to dry my clothes, or it's just easier to do this instead. It's just, and so there are the things that make doing certain things environmental harder. So anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, that is so important. So there's two things. There's the education, right? Like how to do it and how to do it in a way that like actually works. And then there's also, there's going to be things on this checklist that aren't going to work for everyone. So for some reason, it seems to work with my house that we don't get musty clothes when we hang up our clothes. But it's understandable that in different people's, you're not the first person to tell me this, that in different situations that, maybe it's something that would only work for people in the summertime. And that's so one of the things that we have been kind of like debating with the checklist is it's incredibly large right now, like all of the different things to do. And some people are saying like, that's really great because it gives like everybody everybody an entry point, like, oh, what can I do today? And other people are saying like, oh, it's overwhelming, like it's too much, so again, would love to hear, as much feedback as possible on that. But I think your point is really important. And even having this conversation though is worthwhile, right? Like, okay, it's harder to hang up our clothes. Like, what could we do instead of that? Or, are there other things that might be more important than that? Like, I think kind of it feels to me like this is a good time for us to start really having these kinds of debates and conversations and really supporting each other, regardless of what your decision is. Like, you tried to do it, it didn't work. Okay, well, is there something else that you can do instead? Leroy.
You mentioned one-on-one conversations, and I can't help but think about this community conversation that's been occurring for the last few years. And when we started probably more than 3 years ago, Sarah asked the question, who else is interested in environmental stuff? And that sort of morphed into a project that Amanda took on. We came up with about 100 different organizations just in our region that are doing environmental related work. And I'm just thinking about, we're not here because we're getting recognized or because of an award. We're here because we share interest in learning. And I'm just thinking that these community dialogues might have a role in something that people can do where they do get recognized and appreciated in a slightly different way, but they also have an opportunity to sort of share their questions and in a fairly informal and user-friendly environment. So just throwing that out.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What you all are doing here is so important. And one of the things we're hoping to like learn is, what are people doing that we can then promote in other places. So the one of the sections of the checklist is advocacy. And I think that people have in their mind, like when they think about advocacy, they think like, oh, I have to call my senator, I have to call, I have to do this like political advocacy, but there's so much else that can be done in your local community. And starting a green dialogue, in your local community is one of those amazing things that is so powerful. And, if people don't, one of the things we're hoping is that people will get these kinds of ideas. So that's something that we would love to add to the checklist, and then encourage people to, be able to advertise that this exists in people's community. We're obviously starting like locally and then like hoping to expand to Michigan and then seeing if it could be expanded larger than that, but clearly like really focusing on local in Michigan at the start.
It's related to that is that there's been these small teams that have, or small groups that have come out of these conversations. The Green Burial is one example, with Sarah and Kim and Bruce, and probably others. But can kind of spin off where if you find something of a common interest, you can kind of go with it as a small group. And so it seeds other conversations. Anyway, Sam.
Yeah, something you said there, Leroy, kind of reminded me of the dialogue that we're talking about here a few minutes ago, where was mentioned about the one-on-one conversations. And I got to mention, I did have to step away for a couple of minutes, so I might have missed an answer to what I'm going to ask or talk about. But I think that one for me is, I'd really appreciate knowing more how to engage with people that are just in total denial, and how, if there's a way to do that for I guess. And I do want to mention that on some of the social media that I've looked at, where there's posts about whatever, some environmental good thing, and the comments seem to be, quite often anyway, totally ridiculous. There are people coming out of the woodwork that just don't believe in climate change, and it's all a scam and blah, 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 blah. So I guess what I'm getting at is it seems to be a loud group. I don't know if they're in the majority or what, but they sound like there's a lot of them. And so, and then there's what I've seen anyway is not a whole lot of response by people that are more sensitive to the environment. And I don't know why that is exactly. Other than the fact that for the experience I've had with trying to communicate with some of these people that are in total denial, you just can't. They just have a wall that is impenetrable. And if I knew how to engage with them in a more sane way without, both of us getting upset or whatever, that would be great.
Yeah, this is really important. I just want to go back to what Leroy said for just a second, and then I'll respond to that. Just that if people want to join our team or have a spinoff team here in Meridian Township, we're very, very open. I can give you all my email and phone number. I would love to have your participation. We have, as I said, like students and faculty and community members involved and people who are volunteering and whatever. So yeah, would love to continue this conversation with folks. But in terms of what your comment, Sam, which is so important, it seems from surveys that the majority of Americans care and are concerned and actually do want to take action. Mm-hmm. So the people that you're talking about who are, really vocal and, against taking actions, and kind of speak up in these comments and on social media and things, is actually the minority. When you do polling, that most Americans really do care. And they want to take action, and that's particularly the case, and maybe even includes some of the people that you're talking about when you talk about nature. So one of the things that we have been discussing as a team is whether or not we even want to use the word climate on this website and app, or if we really want to focus on nature. Because if you think about everything that can be done for climate change, you can, whatever you're doing, with this positive, would also be positive in terms of reducing pollution. And most people care about having clean air and clean water, even if they don't believe, that the planet is heating up. And so hoping that this can be kind of a unifying kind of initiative where it's not as, it's probably not going to be possible. I'm sure it's not possible to, have it not be at all polarizing given the climate, social climate of our country. But at the same time, there are kind of some unifying messages that could potentially resonate with more people. And so we're hoping to kind of work with different messages and test out different messages in that way. And as someone who's done a lot of political canvassing, or not, a fair bit of political canvassing, I've found that it's, if you go in with the attitude like you're not going to convince everyone, but just kind of have a positive message, and that it's still possible to have productive conversations with people, and that really one of the main goals of this is really to just kind of jumpstart those conversations, because I don't think any of those, I think those conversations can only help, even if you don't come away like satisfied, like, oh, I convinced this person or what have you. But there's a tremendous amount of people out there that do care and do want to take action, but they just kind of feel like they don't know what to do, and like, why should I bother, because nobody else is doing it. And so, and also, when they are shown what to do, it's like difficult, as people said earlier, like it's not easy, it's maybe expensive. So we're hoping that we'll have enough things on this checklist where people that are free, maybe save you money, that people can engage with it. With that, Kim.
We have about 5 more minutes. Sorry to say, we can do this again if there's if people want to pursue this further. You too, Catherine. Kim, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I was just going to say, you'll never convince anybody of anything if you go into it as a confrontation. You have to kind of lead by example, and you have to find things that you both agree on and work from there. But if you go in with, you can't ever spray for mosquitoes. That a lot of people are turned off right from the start. But if you start the conversation with, hey, something to consider, when when you spray for mosquitoes, first off, you're only killing the adult mosquitoes. You're not doing anything for all the larvae and eggs that are laid in the whatever ponds or water source happens to be around. And not only are you killing you're not just killing the adult mosquitoes, but you're also killing every insect, including all the beneficial pollinators. Here's another way that you can lessen, the aggravation of mosquitoes without killing off every other insect in the area. You have to kind of start the conversation with, have you ever thought of doing this, rather than saying you need to stop that right now. And I think that is a problem not only with environmental conversations, but especially lately with, anything that has the slightest tinge of a political agenda.
I love this. This is exactly right. And we're working with some social scientists at MSU who test out messages. And I think you're exactly right. So one of the messages that I tried, I went to the outdoor, quiet outdoor symposium at MSU's campus a couple months ago, and so I tried out the message. MSU is like, let's say we were, like at a festival or canvassing or whatever. Like MSU is starting a new initiative where we're encouraging people to talk about the things that they do for the earth and to thank them for it. And then I said, what are you doing for the earth? And then people told me what they were doing. And, it was really fun for me to be able to say like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I had this one woman say like, that's right, you should thank me. It's like a new conversation for people. They haven't like had that conversation before. But so now you've like heard what they're doing, that kind of opens them up. And then you have this potential opening, this again would like, we need to really kind of like try this out kind of, with many people, but you have this potential opening to say, I'm so happy to hear what you're doing. Let me tell you what I'm doing. We decided not, we used to spray for mosquitoes in our yard. We decided not to because we're not actually, killing the mosquitoes, and it's actually hurting our pollinators. And I've actually noticed in my yard that we don't have any bees in our flowers anymore. And so, this is something that I'm doing, and I'm part of this new initiative. Like, would you like to, learn more about it or something like that? Where it's so like when you have this positive conversation with someone, they're oftentimes like more open to hearing a message rather than that like immediate confrontation. And also when you kind of like say it as something that you've done, then people might be more interested in listening. Yeah, and we're gonna, as I said, like we're kind of like creating scripts to kind of like test them out. One of the books we're kind of working with is called the Lean Startup, where like you just like you create a product and then you just kind of like test it out in like different ways to kind of see what works.
This has been a rich conversation. I hope we'll have a conversation about this conversation next week. And maybe continue to brainstorm ideas. Thank you so much, Catherine. I hope you'll be back to, if you've got a topic or a different angle you'd like to take, or just continue this conversation. Again, love to put you back on the schedule. Any other parting comments from you or anyone else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, we didn't have time to look specifically at the checklist, but if anyone is interested in looking at the checklist and giving feedback, I would love that either in a conversation format or just, through email or, any way that people can give feedback. So I don't know if you want to, can I have a list or the people want to put their name in the chat or something like that? And then I can email that to folks.
I'd be happy to send out the whatever follow-up information you'd like me to distribute, and
Okay.
it might be fun to come back next month and just talk about what people impressions they got or follow up conversation to this one.
That would be fantastic if you want to send out the checklist and then we could have another, if people are willing to have another conversation specifically about that.
Great. I see some nodding heads, and yeah, hope to see you all next week. And thanks again for the great conversation. Any other parting comments?
Just thank you so much for inviting me. It's been really, really wonderful to meet all of you and share and talk. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks, Leroy, for inviting me.
Thank
you
you.
for coming.
Have a great week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.